And what were you thinking? What were you looking into? What did you learn about Sebastian's case early on?
Well, what really drew me to the case initially was a personal thing, and that's being a parent of autistic children. And so that automatically like caught my attention. Seeing that this young man's missing and he's autistic. In the early days, when we were first watching some of these interviews with mom and stepdad, I really didn't know what to think in the beginning. I kind of was leaning towards what was really being told to us was like that he was what typically you hear of autistic individuals, or children that will elope. And so we didn't know anything about his background at that point. So my brain kind of went to it. I mean, it's easy to, just because, I guess that's just one thing you learn automatically. It's one of the first things I learned in being a parent of autistic children was like, this is something you have to be very vigilant about. So I'm like I have, locks on my windows, additional locks on my doors, just because those things can happen. So my brain did go there first, off the get, right out the gate, but it didn't take too long, probably within, I want to say, probably within the first month or so, I was like, something don't feel right with all of this. And then as we began to hear more from his father, Seth, and to learn more about that he was very high functioning, just to hear that he was doing the same peer work that he was doing, keeping up with his peers in high school, I was like, that's very high functioning. So
ABA therapy. Now, I wrote this down because we heard Seth talk about that. He was planning on, Sebastian at some point was supposed to come and live with him, and he was going to do homeschool with the ABA therapy. Yes. A lot of people that don't have autistic children or children on the spectrum don't know what ABA therapy is. Could you give them just a little, Reader's Digest version of it?
Absolutely. ABA therapy, it stands for Applied Behavioral Analysis. It is a therapy that is specific to autism, and it helps children learn how to self-regulate. A lot of children struggle in areas like, I know, for example, I think Seth had mentioned at one point, like needing, like I think Sebastian may have needed just a little extra time. Just learning it helps with socialization, something that a lot of autistic individuals don't get, is socialization. So it helps in a lot of different ways, but it mostly helps to manage behavioral type issues.
Yeah. And the real Me Too was telling me also, diet. I didn't know this. She says that her grandson's on a very strict diet. And I said, well, what does that have to do with autism? She says, believe it or not, the food has some type of effect as well.
It can. It very much so can. We try to stay away from. Now, the Real Me Too, they are like, she's amazing. So she's a little bit better at things than I am on that aspect. I'm not gonna lie. But we stay away from. I try to do all dye free. There's a lot of studies out there, like specifically with certain dyes that can exacerbate behaviors in autistic individuals.
You learned about Sebastian Rogers. Now we're about a month in. Things aren't sitting right with you. Things are starting to become red flags. I think for many of us, I think it was around the month mark. I know for me, it wasn't quite around the month mark. Maybe slightly. We had been talking about the case, I think, since March 10th. But by March 20th, I was convinced. By the time I think Smiley Stories is in here, she is, I see her. By the time she did her interview with them, it was done. It was actually done the day before when I saw Olivia's drop. I think it was hers was on the 18th and one was on the 20th, something like that. It was one or the other. But I remember it went from Olivia's to Smiley's, or Smiley's to Olivia's, and they both were problematic because they both had different statements.
Oh, absolutely. Not only that, but it's just the anger that for me, the first red flag was the anger that was seen behind the stepdad. And I'm like, how are you? I mean, I can understand being angry that the child's upset, but this was like angry at things you shouldn't really be angry about, when you really should just be more concerned about finding, your stepson that is missing. And could be God knows where. So that for me was kind of one of the main things. I'm like, why is he so mad? That, and then, the lack of interest. The first time I seen the picture of the two of the parents out to eat while there's a search going on, and they were told they could, and they were told they weren't going to leave the house, but yet they're out to eat, that they're supposed to be staying home for that reason. So it was just bothersome, that, and KP going with him to, back to work. I mean, all these things that are going on when the kids he's barely missing, and y'all just leaving the house willy-nilly. That's just not typical behavior for a child that's missing, like parents of a missing child.
Yeah, and then I think it was Smiley Stories World, I think, opened up, answered a lot of initial questions we have. So we wanted to know if CPS was involved. I was absolutely surprised that he lied about it. He tried to say that yes, their CPS was at their house, but it was only one time. Yet he accidentally slipped and said, "Oh, it was the same one that was here before."
Mm-hmm.
So that told you right there that there was multiple visits because it was leakage.
It came out that CPS had been involved in this case. I started questioning some of my friends and I was like, okay, explain this one to me. Like, would that not be a huge red flag? And this was way before that it had been told that there was not just one, not just two, but 5 CPS reports in a very short amount of time. And they're like, yeah, that's huge.
Over, I think it was a 14 or 17 month period. 5. Next didn't have them at the other property. They weren't having these problems at Remington.
It kind of then leads into what I believe did occur, and I do believe it wasn't something planned. That's my thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That something occurred, but I can't get with it being planned. I don't know why. I cannot get on that, but I just feel in my heart.
I haven't been. It's been hard. The only thing is if there is some things that start connecting the dots at the Texas Roadhouse. If things start connecting at the Texas Roadhouse more than circumstantially, mm-hmm. then I'd have to start moving over that this was more premeditated. But it's my own bias because I see what everybody's seeing. I see the suspicion, but for me, it's just not enough. And I know something's there or could potentially be there, but we're just not seeing it to make that final connection that needs to be had. So
a lot of what Hindsight has been putting out, and I've been watching a lot of the Mob Crew lately, what he's been putting out, just like showing things that I've never noticed. And I mean, I definitely have not watched the Texas Roadhouse video probably as many times as, the Voices of Truth. They're doing
amazing work on that stuff.
They really are. That's why I told you, I was like, how do I go after that, Betty? How do I go after them? They did wonderful. They do such great work.
They do. And what it comes down to is everybody has their skills and
most certainly.
When did you, I guess at this point, tell us what your processes were whenever you were getting this case. Like, what stuff did you read? What stuff did you see? What made you go down this avenue? Because you've been covering this for quite a bit. You probably are as knowledgeable as any of us are that have been covering this case. Yeah. So where did you go? What rabbit hole did you get down?
Mostly, I mean, I could not get off of the fact that really it just boiled down to watching these interviews one after the other, watching the fact that, their actions weren't, the mom and stepfather's actions were not speaking up with what, lining up with what they were saying. And so at that point, I wanted to learn more a little bit about Seth. I started watching more of his things that, he was talking about. I know the big thing for me, my heart broke for him. One of the first interviews I watched, and just there was such a difference, in my opinion, just between the behaviors of the two, because that's usually what I look at. I am in mental health, so I typically am observant of just people's behaviors. And so for me, if what you're saying is not lining up with your actions, there's something wrong there. Because they're talking about how they just miss him and they want him found, but you're not putting any action behind that or showing that truly is the case. So, absolutely. Absolutely. And he has fought tooth and nail from day one. I mean, just anything to keep his son out there. He has ignored some of the things terrible things people have put him through. And it's like, he doesn't care because his main focus is where it should be, where, everyone's should be. And like I said, he's really kind of been the driving force behind, I say to myself, I would love for Sebastian to be found, but I want him found for his dad. I want him found for Seth.
Being from Tennessee, this might be a loaded question if you don't want to answer it. You might not want to. Being from Tennessee and being kind of enlightened over the last few years of some of the, some major cases in your state, how does that, I don't want to sound so cliche about saying, how does it make you feel? But I mean, how does it make you feel?
Not so good. I can tell you that it's almost embarrassing, as what I've said to other people. I'm like, what is Tennessee doing?
Give me just a second. I hate every time I bump this stupid table, okay, you can continue.
You're fine.
When you expect technical.
Well, I told you I knew nothing when it came to StreamYard. I was like, do I even need that? I just wanted to make sure, just to be on the safe side, because I was
it's actually pretty control. Yeah,
I was like, that's not my area of expertise. But it's embarrassing. Like I said, I've already said one thing that I think is horrible as it is. When we're talking about autistic individuals, we are one of the worst states for autism services for people.
On it, and I didn't write it down, so that's why I was trying to talk until I circled back to it in my brain. We hit on the frustration Chris had exhibited on Smiley's web sleuths. There's been a number of them where he's had these very violent, derogatory outbursts, public outbursts. And then we find out, because Smiley Stories World brought the fact that CPS was involved. Then we have all these outbursts going on and on and on throughout it. We see kind of Chris for who he is. He's keel when everything's going his way, but as soon as something is not exactly as he sees, he shoots from 0 to 60 like that. And it makes us wonder, because of those CPS reports, and I think you hit on it a little bit about his volatility, is we're now looking at this as, how is Chris's behavior when Sebastian upsets him?
Yes. And the thing is too, one thing I've noticed, like, and I can, just, my kids or my son's in ABA. So like I'm around other, autistic children as well. And one thing, like, it doesn't take much, like for some autistic individuals, like a loud noise to really startle them or really bother them in a sensory type, audio type sensory type way. And, to be honest with you, I have shed many tears, just really thinking about the fact that I can almost envision Sebastian being very, very scared of his stepfather. That I can.
Yeah. I said, has Katie been abusive to you? I can't remember the exact, I'll have to go back and look at it. But I remember stopping and asking him if Katie had ever been abusive. And that's kind of when we learned that Katie, would wake up, just be abusive toward him. He'd be sleeping and she would just, out of the blue, just start wailing on him. So it always made me, because we always hear about Chris, but Katie's always silent. And those silent ones,
that's the ones to go watch for.
That's it. And it's like, we know he had a bruise on his neck. Where did that come from? She was the only one around him.
Very true. And we know that, she is very much so trained to take care of herself, not only from the training that she went through in the military, but the additional training that she's had in MMA. I mean, she could definitely do some damage to someone if she wanted to, and especially someone that could be, obviously defenseless. I don't know. Like I said, I felt strongly in agreement with you in there being some disconnect with her son. I feel that, just because and again, it's not a passing of judgment in any kind of way. So I don't want to make it sound that way, but I just have never met someone that could have a child, which again, I know she, maybe where she was younger, I don't know, but then leave and just, be deployed. Like, it's not as typical for the mother to do that, so that to me was I was like, So I could almost see where the disconnect could kind of be. She wasn't there for some of those formative years. She was, serving in the military. So.
Yeah. And then, when he gets older and goes missing, she's not there for him either. I mean, Seth has been standing up for his son alone. Yes, they wanted the illusion of doing something, but they never really wanted to put, rubber to pavement. And it's just sad, because Sebastian, from everything I could see, he seemed like a really happy kid. He seemed like, and then now we know how really fucked up, excuse my language, his home life was. Yeah. And for him to still be able to go to school with a smile and still, go to his dad's every weekend and act like nothing's wrong. It just, I don't know. It just breaks your heart a little bit more that he felt so trapped he couldn't even trust his own dad to tell him what was going on.
I know that's heartbreaking. But a lot of times we know for victims, people that are being abused, they're threatened. They're scared to tell someone else. I mean, that's even with adults. So think about a child, I mean, I could see how it would be very easy to manipulate him, I guess is the best way to say it, to not tell. I mean, I could see how it would be very easy to manipulate him, I guess is the best way to say it, to not tell what's going on, or this is going to be way worse on you if not, I could almost see that. And it's,
well, I have to think it was like that at a younger age, and it's just progressed so bad that he started telling his teacher.
Yes.
And,
and that
the punishments.
School was an escape for him. I think that's where he got to be himself. He got to express himself. He got
worse than he is right now. It disgusts me. It disgusts me. We lay blame here on this show after dutiful research. I mean, not just a whim of emotion.
Absolutely. Well, and you can't, I mean, too, because you have to give it time. You do have to look into things, because people do act different. That is one thing that I've had to realize, just like people, they always say people grieve differently, and they do.
And how they just don't care. They don't care about their image. They don't care about what we think. They don't care about what law enforcement thinks. It's just like, basically, so what? We got rid of a kid. Move on.